class. As y'all can see on the board, we can start our bell work. It's going to be on, first the questioning is, I'm going to ask you to research, is it's possible for the president to be sued? After y'all do a little research and find that answer, do y'all agree on that? Once you find it out, do you agree or do you agree on that? And after you provide a little response to that, see if you could find a quote about the executive order that gives your reasoning or supports your reasoning for this response. Then that will lead to our discussion today. We're going to talk also about the executive privilege, and we're going to talk about the powers of the president. And afterwards, we're going to have y'all do a little review for the test, okay?
Yeah.
I think the only fruit that I'm liking this one was a peach.
Really?
Something very good drink.
I think lemon is my favorite.
Let's get some lemon water. Sparkling is just. It's the bad coming to the sparkling. It's too much combination. You can touch it.
I love it, like LaCroix. It's I love LaCroix.
Shot a 2 or 3 in a city.
I can do that.
Shoot. Nope. Alrighty, you get started. So, is it possible for a president to be sued? Does anybody want to volunteer what they found? And in what ways can they be sued if possible? Anybody want to volunteer what they found?
They can be sued, but like for the private actresses.
Right. So, would you try to give an example of what maybe like a private lawsuit?
I don't know what it is. I don't know what a private act is.
So, like suing something privately, of course, it's away from their professional duties as the president. So, being sued privately, of course, if the president's on somewhere outing and he's allowed to drive. Put this scenario, he's allowed to drive. Then he crashes into somebody else's car. Then that person, the owner of the other car, can then sue him for damages. Stuff like that. Something privately, or like some presidents were caught in the act of paying bribes or hush money for instances that which like would kind of detriment their image as the president. So that being sued privately for being bribed, that may be a reason. But anything that's held in a professional and in his title, he can't sue for like voting, signing a bill into law. And if somebody's directly opposing that, they can't sue the president for signing that bill into law. Stuff like that, of course, he can. He has some immunity, or majority of that, he has immunity against being sued like that. So, would you agree with that? Does it give me a little help with that? So why you agree?
They should be treated the same as like everyone else when it comes to like normal day.
Probably matters. Does anybody oppose that opinion? Everybody has the same consensus? Yeah, so it gives the sense of like him having his job duties, doing something for his job duties, that's something different. But if it's resulting in something that he's done in his private life, in a private manner, of course, anybody in a position like that, a governor, a mayor, whatnot, acting in a private manner, of course you could be sued like that. So yeah, I would say that is a good way about it. So, what did y'all find about executive privilege? What does that like entail? Anyone get that? Yes.
I found a quote that says, executive privilege generally allows the president and his close advisors to refuse to produce documents or testimony to the judicial or legislative branches of his government.
Exactly right. That's perfect. So, the executive privilege, like Kate said, it gives the president and other officials in the executive branch kind of immunity of being forced to hand over certain documents that's held in a confidential light. So, as with that, that leads us to what is exactly executive privilege. And as Kate has said, she said verbatim, it's executive powers or executive privilege is the powers of the president and other officials in the executive branch to withhold certain documents or confidential communication from the courts and legislative branch. So that when executive privilege is invoked in litigation, the court should weigh in the applicability by balancing competing interests. So in that sense, balancing competing interests, is it important enough that these documents or what was said and recorded enough for which the court will have to then require that document or that audio recording to be heard by the court? Or is it enough that this information is not so significant that it's deemed to remain confidential? That will give the court kind of like a back and forth. Is enough information that this is important to be told and divulged? Or is it more significant that this stays confidential, that it should not be heard in the court? And this executive privilege was not framed in the U.S. Constitution. The U.S. Constitution itself did not say anything. It was silent about the executive privilege, which executive privilege was rooted in the separation of powers doctrine, meaning separation from the executive branch separates from legislative and judicial branches and vice versa. So within that deep roots of the separation of powers, that gives the ability of the executive branch to withhold confidential information from either branch, like legislative or judicial, because inherently confidential information or communication regarding the executive branch or the president himself shouldn't always be told to other branches, and you may be told in discretion of the president. So, how we see the executive powers grow is usually seen by how much amount of staff or supporting staff is needed to have the government run fluently, perfectly. You see the more staff that's needed to help the government kind of translate and telegraph orders from the president. As of course population increases, the powers of the government has to increase to accommodate and extend information from the president to everyone else. And then also, the growth of executive power is directly related also to the immediate reaction in times of national emergency. So, when something happens where there's a natural disaster, now we see that it's almost immediate that the government is responding to recovery and aid and like people helping out to find victims of natural disaster. So of course, with the increase of government power, it's the increase of money and aid and manpower to help recover from natural disasters. Another aspect of growth in our executive powers is when something new comes up, like new technology. Computers haven't been around for only a few decades ago. So with that, a new whole different entity was established. The access we have with technology greatly extends everybody else's access. So if y'all remember a couple years back where Mark Zuckerberg was held in a conference with Congress, he was being asked questions by senators to which regarded privacy, regarded information and data retrieval that wasn't told to citizens or wasn't told to consumers of Facebook, that they were collecting data and then selling it. So in that manner, the executive branch can now enforce kind of regulations to say we have a growing niche of technology, social media growing. We need regulation to kind of extend to protect our citizens, protect their privacy, protect their data, and that effort that grows in which regulations or the power to regulate grows in which new technology, something new comes up, there must be an action to see it. As this grows up in popularity, there's something to prevent anything harmful done to citizens or the United States itself. So when the person who's elected as president doesn't immediately gain all that power as president. Once the inauguration does happen, he's sworn in and takes the oath of office. That will now telegraph that power that's invested in this one person. So the oath of office says, "I do solemnly swear," which now is affirmed, that I will faithfully execute the office of the President of the United States and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. With taking that oath of office, he is then now, or in the future, she will then now be able to discharge all the powers of duty as the president. And simply, like it is to protect and defend the Constitution. And us, of course, the people. So if y'all can remember how the president has 8 different duties, he also extends with the powers that come with being the president. He has executive powers, diplomatic or military powers, he has legislative powers, and judicial powers as well. So, first I'm going to start talking about the executive powers. One part of his executive powers is, of course, executing the laws. It's a legislative branch that develops the bills to become laws. It's only until the president himself or herself in the future signs that bill into law, which then he executes it so that when in need of defending that law against violators, the judicial branch will enforce it. His other powers that he does have under the executive powers is the ordinance powers, and it's the powers to issue executive orders. Executive order is a direct regulation that acts like a law. And one example I use with my other classes is Eisenhower had a executive power which involved the Little Rock Nine, where there was the desegregation of public schools. And 9 children, of course African American children, had to be escorted by the National Guard, which this executive order told all National Guards that were on duty and reserves to now protect these children, prevent protesters from getting to these children, and enforce that these children would now go to this school, and thus desegregating public schools in Arkansas and of course the nation. But in the executive order, he doesn't have to go and talk to his legislative branch, to Congress, saying, I need this signed by y'all, let me get an approval. He could say that immediately, I am ordering you, or the country, with this executive order, I want this to happen. And with that, anything that he says through the executive order, that will be effective as law. Another part of the executive powers he does have is the appointing powers, which also is with consent of the Senate. If y'all also see how those 3 branches have to work interminglingly, work together, always constantly working together. Checks and balances is the most important part of these 3 branches. He has the power to appoint cabinet members, ambassadors, judges, and head of independent agencies as well. So I'm going to go on with the powers, diplomatic and military powers. So he, as the president, or she in the future, will have the powers to make treaties, which then the Senate will give a 2/3 approval. These treaties are set in which that, of course, him and another head of a state will then agree to something like I am the president, and Aiden is the president of Cuba. And this is now, we make it a treaty to open up conversation back and forth. Aiden and I now having this conversation, we want to break this tension that we had for a couple of decades now. We having this tension a couple of decades beyond. I want to stop this this tension. I want to have a treaty, a peace treaty, together in which we could open up trade with your nation and our own. This will initially start the conversation and working together so that we can open up trade. And after, the president could have an executive agreement or a pact between myself, the president, and Aiden, the president of Cuba, or a foreign state that does not require the Senate's approval. It's now after me and Aiden had this conversation and made a treaty of peace. And now we're opening up trade. I have another conversation with Aiden, the president of Cuba. Hey, we're doing so well. We've been doing so well for 2 years. I want to see if do you approve as well. I want to have open travel between our nations so that my people can vacation and explore your country and your culture and what you have over there. And your citizens could come over again, explore, and vacation in my nation. We agree on that. We shake hands. Now we're opening up more trade, conversation, movement between both Cuba and the United States. Now our citizens could go down and travel, go down and vacation. Their families or their citizens could come up, establish themselves here, move here to the United States, whatnot, or vacation here as well. But then, as diplomatic or now military powers, the commander-in-chief role, the president can then, after the approval of the Senate, once war is declared, the president could give orders to where his troops and then the military branches, which troops will go where. So even though war is declared, it's the president that gives the direct orders to say, we have war with this country, but I want the Navy station in this this lake, this ocean, this area. I want the Marines this location. I want the Air Force. I want the Air Force in this location. We'll break that. So, as the commander-in-chief, he can then direct his military branches to go exactly where he wants to go, how many vehicles, munitions, armed men will go in a certain direction, a certain location. Along with that, you can see how our branches of the government intermingle with each other. He also has legislative powers to recommend legislation, is one. If y'all usually see every year, there's a State of the Union address, which of course, that is his number one way to recommend legislation. That in that State of the Union address, he says, I want this passed in Congress. I want this to go through in Congress. I want y'all to look at this and have this voted on in Congress. He can have a whole agenda to say what he wants to pass in Congress. And of course, y'all remember fondly, is that the president has the ability to veto any bill that is put on his desk. And then lastly, he has the power to call a special session of Congress, which I taught y'all not too long ago was the most infamous special session was a result of the bombing of an attack of Pearl Harbor. The day after, FDR held a special session and said and asked Congress to declare war against Japan. So in that special session, that's one way the president can ask Congress to do something. So lastly, the president has judicial powers. In one power that he has the power to pardon or legally forgive someone of a crime. One famous pardon was by Gerald Ford with pardoning Nixon, Richard Nixon, because of the Watergate scandal. So he pardoned him from his crime. Another judicial power that the president has is to reprieve someone's sentence. And reprieve is simply postponing a person's sentence or fine. So if somebody has a sentence that has a 5-year sentence, the president can reprieve that sentence to not start immediately or start a year later or a couple months later. Another power that the president has is to commute a sentence. Commuting meaning to reduce somebody's sentence. So the president could say or see somebody who was arrested and sentenced to 2 years in jail for having possession of illegal drugs and had no other prior offenses. So the president can see that person's case and say, I want to reduce your sentence instead of 2 years. I wanted to have you serve 6 months. And of course, on this graph, show y'all, I'll put up in this presentation, is to date, President Obama has the most commuted the most sentences, which is over 1,000 people. So he had commuted 1,170 sentences. The next one over was Johnson, I believe, and it was 200 and change. So he exceeded Johnson's commuted sentences by almost 800. And that has, of course, the president has the power to do as much as he pleases and commute any kind of sentence or reduce any sentence as he so chooses. Well, but of course, they're not going to have a person who had murdered somebody have the sentence reduced from 25 years down to 5. That won't happen. There has to be a certain reason, something different than murder. And then lastly, he could provide amnesty to a group of people. It's a general pardon, which offers a group of law violators amnesty, so that they won't have legal repercussions for what they did. A famous example of that was Jimmy Carter granting amnesty to draft evaders. These draft evaders did not want to go to war. They did not feel that it was important or this war valued their life over anything else. So draft evaders, of course, they went away from being drafted and going into war. So any young man who turns 18 gets in a letter from the government saying, basically, this is your certificate stating you're eligible to be drafted. And it's basically a week after you turn 18, every young man in this nation will get that letter in the mail. And it's been generally only the men that had gotten that, and men only getting drafted into war. So that was it for the lesson. As I told y'all earlier, we're gonna have the remaining part of this class, and I'll help y'all with creating questions. We have a review for the test. I'm gonna post that for y'all. Let's see. So you see on the board, I am asking y'all to pair up with a partner. It's not even for this class, so one group will have 3 of y'all together. We'll pair up with each other. You will create a 15 multiple choice questions to review for the test. In that you have the study guide as well. You can take questions from the study guide to kind of solidify your understanding of that, or you can look at the PowerPoint to create questions to answer. So in a pair of 2, y'all will split it in half. One will have 8, one will have 7. Y'all can work together to finish the 8th question. But in effect, if y'all create, split down the middle, you create half of each question. After y'all finish the one, so I'll say Anna and her sister Sarah are partners. Anna will make 7, Sarah will make 8. Anna will then quiz Sarah on your 7 questions you had made. She'll close her laptop and make sure and try to quiz her to see how much she gets right, and then Sarah will do that in reverse after y'all finish. So, and then help y'all to create the multiple choice questions. If y'all look at a test, y'all probably really see how a test is made. There's generally always one question, one answer, A, B, C, or D, that's the correct answer for the question. Generally also, you may see 2 answers that are maybe the right answers that sound very close, sound similar. That usually is created to kind of make y'all think critically and really look through the question, what's asking you, read all the answers, what's asking you, which one best suits and what's the actual answer. And lastly, is always a answer that's completely incorrect. And generally, it's something like either far-fetched or something just unreasonable. So in that manner, y'all will create your questions in that it could be any from A to D, have the correct answer listed, have the 2 others have like a maybe answers that sound like it could be the right answer, sound like it's almost close. That's to fool your partner, so that it's not easy for them to kind of review, so that they have to know the information. And then you can make something outrageous for the last question that you know immediately when y'all taking tests. You could look at a question and immediately know this answer is just completely wrong, and you cross out, so you're down to 3. So, if y'all could partner together, I'll be walking around the class to help y'all out. If you get stuck with an idea of a question that you want to put, I can help y'all out as well. So, if y'all want to group up with each other, there's 13 of y'all. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13, yeah. So one group will have 3. So the group of 3 will split down to 5 questions each. And then, sorry if I keep on talking, but each person would have their questions color-coded differently, so that I know who had done what question. And both of y'all will have to submit that for a grade. So it's easy grade, help y'all review, help y'all have a little fun, and review for the test. All right, y'all can get. Y'all ready?
It's cool if I go to the library.
Do you want to make the document?
Oh, do we even need to make this we're going for?
Yeah,
If you
sure.
have
You said
to
for around
I think we should.
have in this class, because of course now you're studying for the next class as well. So it'll help you for your test on Tuesday.
Yeah.
So this review will help. You could do
Sure.
half of it, get the questions down with your partner, quick review, and then you can study for that class.
What?
Sound better? Sound fair?
What are you guys doing? I gotta go to the library. I gotta like print stuff out. I'm not doing
And
it.
you could read stuff real quick. I can get you that.
That's supposed to be your
But asking just stuff.
You want me to do the questions?
Yeah, if you, who's your partner could be.
I mean, I just do it by myself.
So, yeah, and that.
Just come up with 8.
Yeah, come up with 8 questions, and then I'll see you, I'll quiz you on it, and then go grab that, make sure you grab your stuff, and come back really quick, okay?
I called Pete.
So, you don't two work with each other?
Do I have to have a person?
Yeah. So, y'all could do 2, the boys in the back could do 2, that way. If you do by yourself, how you do review. That's how I want it. Well, Have a good group three.
We're.
So we do multiple choice, right?
Is that yours?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
So when y'all two together, those ladies get back together. Assist.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. Y'all are like literally like, y'all were actually one person in the beginning.
Sorry, guys.
That makes sense.
Got like 3 questions.
Can you give me a call?
It's part of the audit. But yeah.
Sorry, computer. It's been like that for so long. There we go.
It just takes a minute. It gets
So again, if y'all are stuck, the study guide is there for y'all to get some kind of ideas what to figure out and help y'all out too.
Shit, this one. They're watching, just get a quiz.
Y'all have
Oh, I literally. Thanks.
Yeah, but that happened to me before you got turned across the block. Always block. You got turned. That's the
And I think,
I can't get down.
oh, sorry, I wasn't thinking. Y'all go. Okay. Okay, cool.
That's fine.
pull up the study guide for y'all too, to look on the board as well.
I guess, yeah, I don't know. Do we? Oh, it has to be multiple choice, right?
Yes, ma'am. Once y'all get the ball rolling, then you'll kind of, with the study guide and presentation, you will find little ways to affect that part.
I think we're just gonna highlight a grade.
Can multiple choice be like true or false?
True or false is inherently a bad way to estimate students.
Like, is it 50-50?
No,
Yeah, exactly. I feel like that's amazing.
y'all are at the age where your brain's gonna be like criticizing yourself. When you're looking at that, it's like, do you think it's true, do you think it's false? When you're looking at particularly some part of the question, you might jump over behind it. So a lot of people just refer to true and false.
I think we
A lot of
are.
people just stop that
I don't know how long we
way.
get
Yeah.
that though.
I love them when I just do true and false. It's me 50-50.
The 50-50, y'all, if somebody does have a testing anxiety, that 50-50 because of yes and no, that kind of messes it up. So a lot of teachers have strayed away from true or false type of questions. What y'all got? I was setting that up to show the kind of, okay, well, touche, you want that, we click that.
What? Yeah. All right, I'll be 6 through.
I'm just gonna do that. So
Oh,
It's the order matters.
Can we do A, B, C and not D? We have to do 4.
Then you could do something,
You get a 1.
add some students just put, what's this question article? What does the article of Confederation? What does the article of Confederation do? Give you the menu of McDonald's. Something dumb like that.
Alright,
usually you probably see something just, big quickly or something. Is the wrong answer?
Okay.
Get to work.
Copy and paste it.
The teacher will just put random things just to help
No, true or
the
false?
students out.
Is that
When I was
actually
in high
true?
school.
Yeah.
Just something
Is it
random.
serious?
Yeah.
So it'll be a question on.
What do you know?
What is
It's
So a question on eighth grade,
Yeah.
who was this
Really?
person? And
Not
then
really.
just randomly or like, who was the greatest ever in ancient or whatever not, he said his name again, which is something.
No way
pretty-
you're deleting that.
It was just easy, he made it fun.
I'll be.
It's this.
You gotta. Do like the. You put on the board that says I'll be in D. Not A&B.
Okay, well then I'm doing this.
I should have worked on. You did a period. You're supposed to do a period. This was just ended.
Here's some.
What is he?
You're gonna be confused if you see that.
I don't touch
Well,
base.
then maybe you should study more for this because clearly the answer is yes.
Oh, you guys covered.
That's a smart way about it. Angel. Matt, you're looking at Quizlet. Oh, sure.
I made this quiz from the presentation.
Wait, you made it?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I got 1 through 5 on this. I was.
Putting question forward.
I'm just gonna.
Yeah.
Because you're like.
Fine,
I don't know
yeah.
which ones to use because you see which you do like at first time.
Oh, we could go back to what's in there.
I'm going to do seven. I did. You can literally look at the questions.
You can do A, you can talk. It's if you do all of your life.
No?
What you got?
I'm on 8.
Check this out. Stop for a second before. That's what. So that's.
She had space. She has space.
Who takes over as president? Yes, ma'am.
I have a paper in Miss Walsh's room that I need to come for my special event.
Give you some pass. Okay. Quiz you real quick.
What?
So, y'all done? Alright, quiz you. If I can be in order.
Okay.
I like the pasta move too. It's making me laugh. Okay, so. So,
Let me go look at the study guide.
They're just pen.
thank you. Maybe what's this pen?
Thank you.
Okay. So what is the commander in chief in charge of?
Wait, do I get to the choices?
Well, you made them.
I'm not, I don't even remember what it
Okay, now I'll give you those.
Oh,
choices.
U.S. Armed Forces.
Right. So that's one down. Who is the current U.S. president? Donald Trump, Joe Biden, Bill Gates, Tom Brady.
Joe Biden.
Where does the president live? White House, Blue House, the bank, the beach?
The White House.
Turkey, you suck, man. Who takes over as president if the president dies? A general, secretary of state, vice president, or a senator?
Vice President.
Right. Who takes over if the vice president?
Yeah, it is. If I
So
can be
if something happens when both president and vice president passes away,
Secretary of Defense.
no, the secretary of defense maybe five rows down.
Is it a secretary or something?
No. Who's name both leaders of Congress? Not name them, but name their titles.
The Speaker of the House
That's one.
and the Senator.
The president pro tempore.
President.
So which one out of the two?
The President.
Actually, that was the second. So it's the Speaker of the House. Gets. Let me actually check myself before I incorrectly say. Yeah, the Speaker of the House is after the Vice President. So on the test, y'all need to know somewhat of the line of succession.
Okay.
Alright. So I got that. What branch is the president in? Executive, judicial, legislative, or pasta?
Executive.
I like the pasta part of it. So that. Okay, how does the U.S. decode decide its next president? The Electoral College, Senate, House of Representatives, Burger King has an order from 1 to 5.
Electoral College.
Right. And
Can't read my questions.
how many terms is the president allowed to serve in a row? Yeah. How many years is one term for the president?
4.
This is such a
Now.
big one.
Before you go.
I'm so stressed out about it.
What?
Oh, you're gonna ask me?
Yeah. What amendment gives the vice president to decide presidential disability?
25th Amendment.
Right. So, what amendment was in response to the 1796 election and 1800 election, in which the ballot is separated for the president and the vice president?
All right, what question? That's an amendment?
Yeah, what amendment
You're on your head.
changed in response to the 1796 election and 1800 election?
21st.
Flip the numbers around.
12?
12th
All right.
Amendment. Those are important as well, knowing the 12th Amendment and the 15th Amendment for your test.
All right.
All right, so
You ready?
again,
Ready?
what amendment talks about vice president vacancy? It's vice president vacancy.
So 25th was the president.
25th talks about the presidential disability, but what you have it there?
26th?
No, 25th. 25th talks about the presidential disability, and then if in case the vice president vacates their position. So in that aspect is it's section 2. So it states in that amendment it states if in case a vice president vacates the position, the president will then nominate a person to take that role.
What's an example?
So when you nominate that person, then Senate has to approve of that position. Okay, that's also important for the test, right? You can nominate yourself to make you pass.
I did the 25th and I did the 12th.
That's an option.
So that's the next class?
Yes, sir.
Tuesday?
The 30th.
All right. Appreciate it.
We can just change it to something about the 22nd.
Hey, there's one thing
What house?
I'll tell
What house?
Mine.
There's probably houses all over there.
I haven't been.
Sorry, I'm not reading yours.
I didn't really